Strange Ride is brought to you commercial-free through the generous support of our patrons. Visit strangerideshow.com and click on Donate to help keep the history of the weird on the digital airwaves.
Where we last left off, we learned of the notorious Jigsaw killer who doesn't actually kill people, but tests them to see if they have the will to live. He has kidnapped and tested a lot of people, with not very many of them proving that they have the will to live, or so Jigsaw says. Jigsaw, or his real name, John Kramer, is a cancer patient who doesn't have much longer to live. He takes on an apprentice by the name of Amanda Young, a young used-to-be drug addict who survived one of his games and believes that Jigsaw saved her life. She will take on the mantle of Jigsaw once John passes away. That is until she loses faith in Jigsaw's teachings and starts to make his traps inescapable. John tries to test Amanda one more time to see if she can truly be a worthy successor to him. With 2 or 3 games, depending on how you look at it, combined, he puts his theory to the test. Unfortunately for John, he misjudged Amanda and she failed, sealing all of their fates. John Kramer, the infamous Jigsaw killer, and his apprentice Amanda Young both died at the end of the very 3rd movie. But the story keeps moving forward, with and without them. Today, we will be finishing, hopefully, going over the plot to the Saw franchise. So, I feel like my Jigsaw game for this episode is to be able to finish it. But within
or else what?
Do we kill you?
He burns down our theater. I don't know. You know, I feel like we're in a trap right now.
All of us.
3 of
Yes.
We
us.
either
Not
get
just
through
you.
this. Damn it, Bree.
And I need to.
This classic Saw, from what I can tell, though, that we had no, we
We're
didn't guess.
unwilling
We're innocent
participants.
bystanders who
Yeah,
got caught
and
up in
it's
the action.
Savannah's
You're-
sins that we are paying for.
Yes, precisely.
Yes, you're in my game. And so that's Brie Literal, and then the smartest man I know, Ralph C. Thompson of Occult Confessions fame. And I feel like we need to hop right into this, or
Let's
we're not
get
going
right
to finish
into
this.
it.
I have, how many pages? I think it's like 12 pages to
Oh,
get through.
Lord, yes.
So
That's a lot.
We will whisper quietly and have monosyllabic responses to this.
Yes. Unless,
no, please.
unless
Please
we
interrupt
get to
me.
6, then I have thoughts. We talked about this.
All right.
We're going to start with Saw 4. We ended with Saw 3. Jigsaw and Amanda Young are dead. So we open with Jigsaw's autopsy, showing us very clearly that the man is dead and there is no coming back from the dead in this series. Are they considered morticians? So the people who examine the bodies?
So they were medical examiners.
Oh, okay, medical examiners. That's what they are. I couldn't think of the word medical examiners, so I just said mortician. And I'm like, I know that's not right, but anyway. So as the medical examiners are searching his body, they find a small tape that says "Play Me" covered in wax in John Kramer's stomach. So they play the tape and call in Detective Hoffman, who is now actually the last lead detective who has been working on the Jigsaw case since the very beginning, even though we were only introduced to him for a split second in Saw 3. So he's now like our main lead detective. On this tape, Jigsaw says,
"Are you there, detective? If so, you're probably the last man standing. Now perhaps you will succeed where others have failed. You think you will walk away untested. I promise that my work will continue. You think it's over just because I am dead. It's not over. The games have just begun."
When did he swallow that tape during all that events of number 3?
he swallowed it sometime during 3.
How big is it?
It's probably like an inch or 2. It's like 2 inches.
I would recommend if you're trying to fight off your brain expanding, you shouldn't swallow random plastic objects.
Well, he wasn't genuinely trying to fight it off. He knew he was going to die.
That's true.
It was just...
It's part of his 4D chess,
A lot
Rob.
of false premises here. But all right, okay, he swallowed the tape. I buy it.
He had the will to live. He had the will to swallow that tape covered in wax so that it could be found in his autopsy because he knew he was going to die because he's an omniscient god.
He had the will to live, so he swallowed the...
Yeah.
I think that his GP would dispute that swallowing...
Well, he was dying
large
anyway,
plastic
though.
objects
He
is-
was dying.
He had the will to live, but it was out of his hands if he lived or not.
We don't have time for these debates.
Okay.
Yeah, we're on a timer. I got to put like a timer noise in the background of the entire episode.
Where's that for our trap? Where's our timer?
So, okay, so this is when we meet two new special agents from the FBI, Peter Strom and Lindsay Perez. They are now also working on the Jigsaw case, and they believe that they've realized that Jigsaw didn't have just one minion, but two. Hoffman tries to dismiss this, saying that Amanda was the only other minion that the cops knew about, but Strom is convinced that there was a third, and he's determined to figure out who that is. Strom brings in Jill Tuck for questioning. Jill was married to John Kramer and divorced him right before he became Jigsaw. This is where we learn more about John's history and that Jill worked at a rehabilitation clinic that had the motto, cherish your life, which is something that John ends up using in a lot of his traps and his, ideology. John was apparently very meticulous about everything and wanted his child to be born during the Chinese New Year of the pig because the pig is a symbol for rebirth, which is why Jigsaw and his minions use pig masks to kidnap their victims. Supposedly. Rob wasn't sold on that, but I didn't even bother to Google it because I'm like, that's the point they make in the Saw movies about it. So everything was going according to plan until one night a drug addict by the name of Cecil broke into the clinic to steal from it while Jill was still there. As he was making his hasty retreat, he bursted through the door and hit a very pregnant Jill with it, causing her to miscarry. They were going to name the baby Gideon, and the loss hit both of them very hard. And then this is when John started his downward spiral, and it only was made worse by the fact that he was diagnosed with cancer not long after that. That is when he decided to drive his car off a cliff and decided to start torturing people in order to make them prove that they had the will to live. He started with Cecil and put him through a very crude makeshift trap where he had him press his face into a bunch of knives hard enough to release the restraints that were holding him in place. And Cecil succeeded, but tried to attack John after being released, and then John swiftly moves steps out of the way, and this makes Cecil jump into a box full of razor wire and then dies in the box of razor wire. It's pretty funny, actually. But I feel like it kind of falls into John should be like, you're rehabilitated now, but then Cecil was like, fuck you, and dies.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a valid response for a man who has a will to live.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be pretty
John
miffed.
didn't punish him. No, the man just tried to attack John. John dodged, and there happened to be razor wire stored behind John.
Yes. And I feel like
I
John
see.
did that on purpose because he's an omniscient god and knows how people work. So he purposefully put the box of razor wire right behind him so he could step lightly out of the way, and Cecil would jump into that box head first.
I don't know. He looked too unbothered by it to really think it happened. He was kind of like, well, guess
Maybe he's
that's
just
that.
constantly surrounded by box of razor wire.
I think
wherever
That's
he goes.
true, though.
Yeah.
It was in his, he had a special, workshop in his meat plant that he named after his son that they were going to have.
I see.
And so that's where this game took place. The game of this movie features an officer that we've seen in every Saw movie up until now, I believe. He might not have been in the first one, but he was definitely in 2 and 3. His name is Officer Riggs, or Lieutenant Riggs, and he is obsessed with trying to find Detective Matthews, who was played by Donnie Wahlberg in the 2 and 3. No, not 3. No, he wasn't 3. God, we gotta keep going. I keep getting myself distracted. So he's trying to find Detective Matthews because he believes that if Jigsaw had really killed him, they would have found his body by now. And then they find Detective Carey's body, who was a detective in the second and first movie and the third movie. She died in the third movie. And this kind of sends Riggs into a breakdown, so Hoffman sends him home to take a vacation. However, once Riggs is home, he finds himself in an interesting Jigsaw game that doesn't take place in just one building, but all over town. Riggs is essentially being shown that he can't save everyone, and that some people don't deserve to be saved, but must save themselves. For example, Riggs saves a victim he comes across, who then promptly tries to murder him for being a cop. So that's Jigsaw being like, see, this person wants to kill you anyway, even though you saved them. So he sees all sorts of twisted things and even has to set up a few traps in order to find the next clue on where to go. But he's shown at the very beginning of this game that his prize for making it through the game is finding Detective Matthews alive. Detective Matthews has apparently been kept alive all this time, supposedly for 5 months, and is now in one giant trap that it's so dumb. So bear with me as I explain this trap to you. So he's essentially on a giant scale and standing on a giant block of ice on one side of the scale. So Detective Matthews standing on a block of ice on one side of the scale.
For 5 months.
No.
No.
Okay, all right.
It's actually kind of funny. They show that he was kept in some weird holding cell that had like a slit under the door, and they'd slide food under, and they have like little clips of interspersed of him like rocking himself to sleep or playing and petting a rat that was apparently his only friend for
It's
like
very
5
strange.
months.
It's so like it's like a cliche of, it's almost like Shawshank Redemption kind of stuff, cliche of solitary confinement.
Yeah.
That you have your little pet who comes in through the cracks and that you're getting the food through the slat.
Yeah, and it's funny. You just see him holding it by the neck, so it almost doesn't look. I mean, it's definitely not a real rat.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look alive
No.
either, and he's like petting it. It's really weird. But we do get to see that he was kept alive for that long, which is like Jigsaw never does that. So it's like. Why is Detective Matthews so special, especially since he failed his game like twice in his own movie? So it's like, why is he still a thing? But anyway, that's just I just don't like that. I just think it's stupid. So he's standing on a block of ice with a noose around his neck made of chains. So he's also hanging on a block of ice. So if he doesn't stand on the block of ice, he'll suffocate himself and die on a scale. And on the other side of the scale is now Detective Hoffman, who is the new lead detective, or has been a detective on the case since the beginning, whatever, on the other side, sitting in a chair. So if Detective Matthews tries to hang himself, the scale tips and all the water comes pouring down to Hoffman, and if it gets up to a certain level, it will electrocute Hoffman.
Yep, that's it.
And then there's some other guy in the room that's watching them.
Right.
And there's a timer, and he's like, you guys got to just hang in there until that timer goes off. And they're like, why? And he's just like, I can't tell you.
Yeah.
And I think this trap is so dumb.
Is that guy in his own trap because he's very bored to be watching this?
Yeah, he is actually in his own
Which
trap.
I don't even understand.
He has the dude has some weird thing around his neck.
But do we know what it does?
It supposedly would sever his spinal cord if it goes off.
Feels like they're getting pretty lazy here.
That one felt lazy. This one, a couple of them feel lazy, but then the ones that Riggs has to deal with are not. They're very they're some of my favorite traps, to be honest.
So they're going to pick up steam here.
A little bit.
It just feels like, oh, that guy should be in a trap too. I just said that offhand, oh, that guy's in a trap too, and you're like, no, he really is.
Yeah, it's very weird.
I just imagine the screenwriters in the room be like, well, if there's a guy watching, he's got to be in a trap, right? Yeah, he's in a trap, but what's his trap like? Just stick a wire around his neck. Who cares?
That basically is what it is, because he's wearing a hoodie the whole movie, so we don't really know why he's doing it. But we all know he's not a Jigsaw victim or a minion because we've never seen him before.
Yeah, so the only solution is he's got to be in a trap.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So then he takes the hoodie off, and then you see this thing that's clenched to the back of his neck, and it looks like a claw almost, and it I'm assuming it would pinch him. Pinch his fucking spinal cord and sever it.
Because he doesn't appreciate bossing around police detectives enough.
Yeah, well, this guy is actually, too, he's in the trap because... I didn't write any of this down because I didn't think it was important, but...
You didn't know we'd talk about Hoodie Guy this much.
Yeah, I know. His name, he has a name. His name is Art Blank, and he
Art Blank?
Yeah. He's John's lawyer.
What's his last name? Screw it.
But he's also... So the intro trap in this one, he's the guy who survives that one.
Yeah. So there's a trap in the very beginning of the movie that I didn't really mention because it doesn't really have any pertinence to the plot other than the fact that the guy who survives it is in a different trap later in the movie.
That's unfair.
I know.
Come on. Double jeopardy.
Honestly, too, it's John's whole fucking point in the third movie is that you can't live for revenge. He's taking out revenge on his own lawyer for whatever.
That's
I don't remember what the
I
lawyer
think it's
did.
to get him to participate in the other trap. I think that's the only... He just needed somebody else to run that part of the big trap.
Which is so stupid because the trap that I'm describing with that Detective Matthews and Detective Hoffman are in is basically just sit there in a really uncomfortable position until someone shows up.
Yeah,
that's all he keeps saying.
Puppet could have said,
exactly.
You got to stay there till the timer goes.
And then at one point, too, during this whole trap, Art Blank, the Detective Matthews, Donnie Wahlberg, is fuck it, and tries to hang himself again. Even though he's told that Hoffman will die if he does, he's like, fuck it. He tries hanging
Which
himself
I understand.
again. I get it. Yeah, I guess I get
be
it.
in his position because it's painful,
yeah,
too.
and he's standing on the ice block barefoot, too, which is crazy.
Trying not to suffocate.
Yeah, and so Art Blank goes up to him, puts him back on the ice block, and is like, come on, man, get back up there. He says it almost exactly like that.
Yeah.
And then is like, by the way, here you go, and hands him a pistol with a bullet in it, one bullet in it. And it's like... why? But then he doesn't do anything with the gun. He does later, but like you feel like that he would probably try and like shoot the guy who keeps putting him back on the ice block with it, but he doesn't.
Okay.
I promise. This is the dumbest. I think that this is one of the dumbest this is the dumbest trap at least. It might be the dumbest Saw movie. I think this is my least favorite, other than Spiral, but I don't even count Spiral. So Riggs is like I said, he's running all over town, and he sees all these different traps either taking place or after they've taken place, and he sees like how Jigsaw's traps help people and how Jigsaw can provide kind of like vigilante justice to people who escape through the cracks, because like this is the one where there's like an actual rapist and Riggs is forced to set up that guy's trap, and at first he's like, I don't want to do it, but then Jigsaw shows him somehow like through his pre-planning that this man is a horrible person and a rapist, so Riggs is really like, okay, yeah, fuck you, get in the trap, and he puts that dude in a trap and that guy dies. But Riggs, the whole time he's seeing this timer and he thinks that he has to make it to Hoffman and Matthews before the timer runs out, but Jigsaw pretty clearly is like, no, you need to wait until the timer runs out. Like
you need to get to him once the timer runs out.
Yeah, like you can't get to him before the timer gets there, because then you're trying too hard to save everybody, and they need to save themselves. So it's not your job to save them, but Riggs is like, it's my job to save them,
because he's an actually good human being.
Yeah, and his only crime was that he was too obsessed with his work. Yeah, which that's something that all of us could be in the trap for here. I think
admit we are.
Yeah, that is
we're currently in it.
Caught us.
Whoops.
Okay, so yeah, Riggs makes it through all of his challenges. He wasn't ever really in any danger other than the one lady trying to kill him after she got out of her trap. And so he is running up and he sees on the door that he's got like 5 seconds left. And he's like, I'm gonna make it. And then, but they see him running up to the door, so all three men in the room are like, no, don't come through the door. And so Donnie Wahlberg, he doesn't know or Detective Matthews doesn't know who's coming through the door, so he thinks it's a bad person, so he lifts up his pistol and shoots Riggs as soon as he opens the door, and he opens the door with 1 second to spare. So Riggs gets fatally wounded. Then Art Blank pulls out a tape and is like, you idiot, you were supposed to wait. And he presses play on the tape, but Riggs, as he's dying, is like, you got a gun. And he shoots Art Blank, and Art Blank dies. And then he's listening to Jigsaw being like, Riggs, you shouldn't have gone through the door, you big dumb idiot. And then he looks up and he sees Donnie Wahlberg / Detective Matthews get his head literally smashed by 2 giant blocks of ice that swing down and like smash his head. And then the scale tips and Hoffman starts to like, water starts to pour all over him and he's about to get electrocuted, and Riggs is sitting there dying. Except Hoffman doesn't get electrocuted.
It's crazy.
Oh my gosh. And then he unties himself from his straps and stands up and walks over to Riggs, looks at him and just shakes his head and says, game over, and then closes the door.
So that's the twist, is that the detective was with him all along.
Yep. Some asshole that we know nothing about, who we only met in the previous movie for one scene, is the new Jigsaw minion.
And he was punishing Riggs because he went through a door.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it was set up that like previously on like crime stuff he had gone through like unverified doors. And Hoffman had told him not to do that.
And he's scolded like 3 or 4 times by Hoffman being like, you shouldn't go through that. You never go through an unsecured door. You never do that.
And it's funny because in the flashback sequence, it shows every single one of those.
Yes, being like, oh,
so
you never go
through an unsecured door and you might die is what he's trying to teach him. So he kills him for going through an unsecured door.
Well, Donnie Wahlberg kills him.
Yes.
But I mean, that was the logic of the whole.
Yeah, I think that's why the gun was given to him.
Yeah, well, so that Donnie Wahlberg would try and shoot that person to prevent them from coming into the room, but he doesn't, and Riggs, and then they all die. Yeah. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. And then and then we have another twist, which is basically the same twist as Saw 2, where it wasn't Jigsaw doing it the whole time, it was this guy doing it the whole time. Or that Jigsaw has a minion and that he has help. So this guy put the tape in the dead guy's stomach. No.
No.
No, you see a flashback of John swallowing the tape.
Swallows it. So
John
he's on
swallows
board
the tape.
with the whole plan.
Yeah, John
of the other guy.
Exactly. John and Hoffman.
So he's not
and
really
Amanda.
a minion in that case. He's almost a boss. He's telling John what to do.
No. He's
John's
a minion.
the boss.
John's the boss.
But it's Hoffman's the one who was worried about the doors. He's got the whole door plan.
No. Apparently John was on board with that.
Yeah.
Like John. Yeah.
So for a little
How
bit,
do you feel about doors, John?
We'll see him
Listen, boss,
enact
let me pitch
John's
this to
traps.
you. Let me pitch you a door plan here, your boss.
Well, it's very well proven by watching the Saw movies that Hoffman is not a thinker.
No,
so it's
no.
definitely John's will that Hoffman is like putting out. Because so Strom's argument, the FBI agent who I mentioned before, becomes really important in the next movie, in 5. But his biggest argument was that John was a cancer patient who was bedridden most of the time, and Amanda weighs 100 pounds.
Yeah.
So they're not lifting all these people and like kidnapping all these people themselves. So Strom was like, there has to be a third person. And Hoffman is like this huge dude. He's a beefy guy. So he's definitely the muscle. I'd say John was the brain. Amanda, I don't know what it would be.
She was
His
just
daughter.
very devoted. She was actually loyal to the cause.
She actually believed in the cause, and then Hoffman was the muscle. So this isn't the only twist in the movie, however. So I did, I told you guys what the twist was at the very end of the last episode, where it's that this movie takes place at the exact same time as Saw 3. So they both happen in the Gideon meat plant. And so, like, on one side of the meat plant is where Jigsaw is with Amanda, and Jeff's game's going on. Jeff with the dead child and doesn't really help any of the people that he should have in his traps. And then on the other half of the meat plant is where Hoffman and Detective Matthews are being held in their weird pendulum, not their scale trap or whatever. And you see this because you're watching this movie and Hoffman says game over, and then all of a sudden it cuts to Jeff walking down a hallway. So for anybody whose first Saw movie this is, they're like, who is that?
Who's Jeff? Yeah.
Who is that? This is the first we've seen of this man in this movie at all. Yeah. And then we see Jeff kill Amanda. We see Amanda kill Lynn, and we see Strom, the FBI agent, also somehow ends up on Jeff's side of the meat plant. Like, he's trying to stop the game that's happening, and somehow he doesn't end up on the side of the meat plant that he was meant to. I guess he was meant to end up here because it's John's will and he's an omniscient god. But anyway, Strom ends up on Jeff's side of the meat plant and sees Jeff kill Jigsaw. So then Strom is like, hey man, he like approaches him, and then Jeff has a gun still, and Jeff freaks the fuck out and is like, fuck you, where's my daughter, and tries to shoot Strom. So Strom shoots Jeff, killing Jeff.
Yes.
So that's how Jeff dies, is by an FBI agent killing him. And
it's 5-dimensional chess right there.
It is. And Jigsaw knew all of it was going to happen.
There was no possibility that anything could have happened to louse up that result.
Nope. Not according to John.
Inevitable.
John Jigsaw Jingleheimer Schmidt.
It's catching on.
So Strom kills Jeff, and Strom is like looking around because there's like 5 dead bodies in this room now, 4, and he's like, what the fuck? And Hoffman has now snuck over, sees Strom in the room, like the makeshift surgery room that Jigsaw died in, and closes the door to it, locking Strom in it. And that's where the movie ends. Oh, actually, that's not where the movie ends. So Hoffman does that, and then we hear Jigsaw's autopsy tape again, but in a new light. So he says, just as a reminder, you're the last man standing. You think that you'll walk away untested, but my work will continue. So it's in a way Jigsaw kind of cleverly speaking to Hoffman, knowing that he's his last minion and that he's now the last man standing because Amanda and John are both dead. But then it also suggests that Hoffman wasn't tested, which is interesting because that's sort of like a thing with John where it's like you kind of have to be tested in order to become one of his minions. And that's where the movie ends. You following me?
It doesn't feel good, but I am.
It doesn't feel good.
Is that where that ends?
Yeah, that's where it ends.
You wanted more?
Well, Another thing that I failed to mention is that I mentioned that Peter Strom, Agent Strom, had a partner named Agent Perez. In Saw 4, they're like doing something and they find a Billy doll and it like whispers something to her, so she puts her head up really close to it and then it explodes and like hurts her, but it doesn't kill her. But she's like taken out of the rest of the movie and like in the hospital. So that's another thing that happens that's relatively important, but...
I have a question, but I don't remember when they actually show what happens to him.
Who's Strom?
Yeah.
Literally in the next movie.
Is it in 5?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's where it ends. And so people were very confused because, like, what is happening? And also, who is this man? So, this movie, Saw 5, of course, opens with another jigsaw trap, as the formula demands. But this trap is special, too, because it is another trap that is inescapable. We see the victim follow the rules, but he is killed anyway. So this will be important later. But the trap is a pendulum trap. So this dude is, like, strapped to a table, and pendulum is swinging above him, and Jigsaw's like, you killed this person, and you got off for it real easy, so you need to destroy your hands, because you use those hands to destroy a life, kind of thing. So he like takes his hand and he crushes them in these things, and he did it, and he starts screaming, "I did it!" And then the pendulum still like kills him. So, but that will be important later. It is not related to the plot at the moment. So then we cut back. Oh, never mind. So now this Saw in particular is like, I swear to God, 80% flashbacks.
Yeah.
Because no one knows who the hell Hoffman is. And so now the series has to let us know who he is, how John found him, where he fits in the timeline, and why he wasn't in any of the other Saw movies, and why we should even care about this character at all.
It's almost like it's like when Nintendo came up with the timeline for Zelda. It's like, well, we made all these games and these nerds really want there to be some continuity here. Let's reverse engineer this thing. Doesn't it feel like they're just like, what would be cool? What would be the bloodiest, weirdest thing? What would really make the head spin? This doesn't make any sense. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
We'll write a new movie and we'll go back and we'll make it all make sense.
Yes, but it also feels like they're trying too hard to be clever.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, because part of like Jigsaw's whole thing, and especially with Saw 1, it was like they have these gotcha moments.
Yeah.
So I think that they were also going for these gotcha moments, and they were like, well, who would ever suspect that guy was the third Jigsaw minion? Well, no one would suspect it because the movie never suggested that that he was the third minion.
No.
Right.
They just make him vaguely sketchy for the 2 seconds we see him in. I think it's 3 when he's talking to Riggs and Carrie.
Riggs and Carrie. Yeah.
So it's not a master plan. It's just they're constantly asking, what is the least likely scenario here?
I don't know. I don't know, because it feels like maybe, but I think they also, because in Saw 3, Lee Whannell really kind of screwed them over by killing the main villain, and not just the main villain, but the main villain who was also supposed to take on his legacy once he died. So in order to keep making these movies without them all being prequels, you have to have a new Jigsaw. But they've also killed every important character is dead. So, except for, like, Dr. Gordon, but we don't know what happened to him because Eric Carey Elwes said, fuck you guys, and sued them, and is now has nothing to do with the Saw series. And Adam is dead, and also Lee Whannell, so he didn't want to be involved in it anyway. So, the producers and everybody who wanted to keep making Saw movies were kind of screwed. They kind of had to pick some new guy to be the new Jigsaw.
And it's tropey, I think, in horror to have to do these kinds of things. I mean, we were talking about Jason in Space. I mean, that's about novelty, but also just like making sense of how Michael Myers is not dead, or right? Like Michael Myers was supposed to just be a regular guy.
Yeah.
I mean, insane, but a regular guy. But as the movies progress, you have to like reverse engineer it to make sense of the fact that he just seems to survive all kinds of bizarre explosions and things. And this is like the same problem by other terms, but they've made it worse because they can't really resort to supernaturalism in any way.
No, they can't, because they've made it very clear that there is like no supernatural element.
It's a Dexter problem. This is a Dexter problem. Dexter is incredibly unlikely. And the more people he kills, and the closer, the more tension they try to build by getting him closer and closer to getting caught, the weirder it becomes until it's just beyond belief, and he ends up a lumberjack. Spoiler alert. But you've like by season 5 or 6. I mean, in my experience, I was like, all right, I can't. I'm watching it because my wife needs to finish everything, but I just can't hang with it anymore. I think horror always does that to me. I can only watch the first few in a series.
I mean, especially when the main drama, I guess, is whether or not this person will get caught. Because there's only so many instances of you not getting caught before you're caught. Yeah, and then I guess they tried to work around Jigsaw being caught because, well, he's dead now. And now there's this new guy.
I wonder if that plays into, because we were talking about this, the treatment of Riggs. Why it kind of seemed like they were testing him for potential recruitment feelings. I wonder if that was like the production side of things trying to make up for the fact that they lost their main people, and they're like, okay, well, we're gonna have what's his face, Hoffman, and I think maybe that's why they were playing with that theory without actually following through with it.
That is true, because I feel like I didn't really make that point clear, is that when you're watching Saw 4, it almost feels like the game that Riggs is going through is like a recruitment method. Like Jigsaw is basically like, you should join my team, but he never officially says that. And maybe if Riggs didn't go through the door, maybe Hoffman would have tried to recruit him.
I think that's what that might have been. I think that was they are playing with their real life circumstance in the movie. I think that might have played into Riggs's plot, because I don't know why else they would do that to him.
That is interesting.
Wait, the actor didn't want to do the part anymore?
No. I mean,
the fact that the producers and the people writing this movie, so Saw 3, Jigsaw dies, they're like, shit, we need a new Jigsaw, so they make the game of Saw 4 about recruiting a new Jigsaw.
Yeah. So why not conclude it by actually accomplishing the recruitment?
I think because they wanted their twist ending.
The twist is what ultimately is their problem.
Yeah, it is. Because they actively have to lie to their audience constantly in order to make these twists happen.
Which prevents them from developing a satisfying plot that extends across the seasons.
And I imagine that they made it seem like Riggs was going to replace the Jigsaw role, and then their plot was that now we're throwing that out at this random dude.
Yeah.
It kind of felt... That's a thought I've had now in hindsight.
It would have been kind of neat to see if Riggs had become a new Jigsaw minion. But at least he would
have had morals.
And he would, well, as many morals as you can have as the Jigsaw killer. But also, we know who Riggs is. Riggs has been in every movie. So, like, it would have been kind of cool to see it carry on with him. And then Saw 5, like I said, is like, it basically is trying to fix the sins of Saw 4 by letting you know who Hoffman is. So we're shown that he was a detective, Hoffman, who was put on the Jigsaw case from the very beginning. He had a sister who was his only family, and she was killed by her abusive ex-boyfriend. Hoffman became very depressed and was insanely angry when the courts let the ex-boyfriend off with a 5-year sentence on a technicality, they keep saying in the movie. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
So Hoffman gets the idea to kill Seth Baxter, the ex-boyfriend, in a makeshift jigsaw trap so he can get his revenge in a brutal way and not have to face any of the consequences for it. Even though the police completely buy that this was a jigsaw trap, there is one person who knows that it wasn't one: Jigsaw himself. So he kidnaps Hoffman and basically blackmails him into becoming his minion. I think Hoffman was down for it, but the scene is very strange because he straps Hoffman to this chair with like a shotgun pointed at him, and if he moves too much, it'll like pull a string that'll like pull the trigger of the shotgun. And Jigsaw is like kind of just being like, hey, you should join my team, but you shouldn't kill people. And Hoffman's like, you kill people. And Jigsaw's like, I don't kill people. And he says this line, he's, killing is distasteful. And he says it just like that. Yeah. Even though he's putting these people in these traps, it's a whole thing.
I think that's how Moses said it.
Yeah?
Yeah, it was about like that.
Okay.
The other commandments he was really chill about.
You're just adding to John's God complex at this point. Yeah. John thinks he's God.
Well, I mean, we all have agreed that his 8-dimensional chess is not exactly on the human level.
Wait till we get... There's some other things Jigsaw is, you're right. He's playing like 20D chess.
20D chess.
He is the god in this
Yes.
world. I'm convinced. He's a level of godhood.
But Hoffman is like obviously totally down for like killing people and stuff. So he suggests to Jigsaw is like, you as a detective have a sworn duty to turn me in. But if you turn me in, I'm going to tell all the police that you killed Seth Baxter. And Hoffman's like, well, I could just kill you now. And then he's like, well, I have it all in place that if I disappear, all the information about you will come out anyway. So you can either join my team or you can turn me in and your life will change and you'll be arrested. So it's up to you. So, like, Hoffman could have turned him in, but then it feels kind of like blackmail. And then it also feels like Hoffman being like, all right, I'll join your team. So it's like a whole thing. But... So then we're shown some of the... Oh, that's like the most important things that we get from Hoffman's flashbacks. And then the main game of this movie features 5 people, and because it's Saw 5 and there's 5 people trapped in a game where Jigsaw says to them,
instinct will tell you to do one thing, but I implore you to do the opposite.
Well, they all give in to instinct instantly and start killing each other as quickly as possible. And with their twist at the end being shown that all 5 of the people in this game could have worked together and they all could have survived. Instead, 2 barely make it out. So 2 people do survive, but they barely made it out.
This one makes me so mad because I remember the first time watching this, and every time since, it is so obvious what they need to do in every single part of this trap and how they're smart people. They're like the few smart people in all the movies, but they're just such assholes that they don't care to think about it. They have all of the advantages in this game. This is like the easiest one, in my opinion, to survive.
And
hands
one of the
down.
least painful, too,
yes,
honestly.
one of the least painful.
Yeah, the first one is like they're all strapped in this, like they all have this collar around their neck, and if they pull too hard, it'll like send them to this like guillotine thing and cut off their heads. But they all need to get a key, and then they all race for the key instead of the fact that they all could have used the same key to escape.
Yeah.
It's like a whole thing. And then the next room, there's like a bunch of tunnels that they can hide in, but they have to find the key to the tunnels, but there's only 3
There's 3 tunnels, yeah.
But there's 4 of them, so they're all like, oh, we all have to fight to see who gets to be in the tunnel, even though the tunnels were big enough to fit way more than one person.
Yeah.
And then the third one is like, everybody has to hold a metal object and stick their hand in this like electrocuted water in order to open the door, and they kill one person and just stick their body in there and make them hold all the things, and that's how they get out of that room. And then the last room is meant to be that all 5 of them were meant to stick their hands into this thing and offer up some blood, and they had to fill up a thing to 10 pints of blood in order to get in order to get the door to open, which would have been way easier if there were 5 of them, but there was only 2 of them.
The 2, they do it though.
They do it.
But it's like
they basically cut their
from
arms
the
off
second room on. The third room is like impossible to do without killing somebody if they don't have all 5, because they all need to be able to reach. The idea was that they all would reach the cables instead of them putting the body of one person in the bathtub and connecting the cables to them.
Yeah, they needed everybody.
So it's so dumb. It's so dumb. Like, they could have all, whatever.
Yeah, and it really doesn't have any bearing on the plot or anything. It's just kind of there. Actually, that's not true. There's like a little thing, but anyway, the main plot of it, other than the Hoffman flashbacks, is that Agent Strom is convinced that he knows Hoffman is the other Jigsaw minion, but is kicked off of the case after he barely survives in another inescapable Jigsaw trap called the water box trap at the beginning of the movie. So essentially Strom was locked in... So he was locked in the room at the end of Saw 4 with Jigsaw's dead body, all the other dead bodies. He finds a secret doorway, and there's like a tape recorder hanging in the doorway, and it's like, you can either stay in this room and survive, or if you leave this room and go through the secret doorway, you'll die. And Strom says, fuck you, and goes through the secret doorway. That's literally what he says. He goes through the secret doorway, and then is jumped by a man in a pig mask. So he wakes up with his head in a box that begins to fill with water. And there is no way to escape this trap. But luckily for Strom, he had a pen in his pocket, and he gives himself what is it called, a triotomy or whatever?
Tracheotomy.
that.
The tracheotomy.
Yeah, he stabs himself in the neck with the pen so he's able to breathe, and he's able to be there until the cops show up and like get him out of the trap. Hoffman was meant to leave the Gideon meat plant the only one alive and looking like a hero, having saved Jeff and Lynn's daughter, who's been trapped since the third movie. Like, we didn't know where she was, but Hoffman knew where she was. He walks out with the little girl. Everybody's like, oh my God, Hoffman, it's amazing you survived this. And then Strom is wheeled out on a stretcher, and Hoffman's like, shit. So once Strom is able to be up and moving again, he starts trying to put the pieces together to prove that Hoffman is Jigsaw now. He is lured, and that's when, so like Strom, how the movie goes is like Strom will like enter a room, look at some evidence, and then he's the one that has the flashbacks to see how Hoffman was in everything. And then Strom will be like, he'll say something to the audience being like, oh, so you were the Jigsaw minion, and like, oh, you were the only one meant to escape. And like basically just telling the audience, summarizing for the audience the information we need to know, even though we're watching it happen. It's kind of dumb.
I mean, character-wise, the blackmail thing they shouldn't have done in hindsight, because the guy, like, he's dead, right? And yet the Jigsaw number one is dead. Mm-hmm. And yet here's this detective carrying on all these elaborate traps. He should really be self-motivated to do it, and should have been from the beginning, as opposed to having to be blackmailed into doing it. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? It would have made more sense in the long run if Jigsaw says to him, you want to be my minion? And he's like, yeah. Not having to get into, well, if you don't, then I'll do this, 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 and this. Because he's gone now. And I know he plays 20D chess, but he's dead. It's going to be hard to blackmail him when you can't testify in court.
Yeah, but at this point, Hoffman, I think, enjoys it.
Well,
so.
yeah, he likes killing people.
So that's why I don't know that I would have bothered from the start to blackmail him. I think that needs to be the point that's made from day one, is that he wants to do it, not that he has to be compelled to do it.
I think the blackmail was more so that he would follow John's morals instead of just killing people.
Was he inclined to do that?
Yeah, well after...
He was inclined... Well, John felt like he was inclined to do that because... So, in the Saw timeline, that's another thing, is that Hoffman... It came before Amanda. So Hoffman was Jigsaw's first minion. And so we're assuming that Seth Baxter, the man in the pendulum trap, who Hoffman technically officially killed because it was an inescapable trap, happens before even Saw 1. So it's like very early in the timeline. I've sort of forgotten where I was going with this point, but that is a thing that happens. Where was I going with that?
His willingness to kill. Hoffman's want to kill, and the reason John blackmailing him having to do with him converting him to killing for moral reasons, or not killing but letting people survive.
Yeah, he expects that the guy would want to kill for fun, but so far he'd only killed a guy who he believed deserved to die.
Yeah, exactly. So John was like, you can do that on a much bigger scale, but by giving these people chances. But Hoffman, even in other flashbacks, especially in Saw 6, has shown that he just kind of doesn't care, and he's kind of just there to kill people.
Oh. Everyone's such a psychopath.
He either wants to kill people or he's ready to see people die in the traps.
Mm-hmm.
So far, the actual Jigsaw is the only one who is interested in people's capacity to learn from the traps.
Yes. And Amanda definitely was at first, but then she gets disillusioned at some point and then starts making inescapable traps. Saw 10, which I'll hopefully get to talk about today, kind of shows Amanda when she still fully believes in it. I really like Saw 10, but yeah, by Saw 3, Amanda has fully forsaken Jigsaw's morals, and I think it might even be her own inner turmoil as well, because she's like, well, I'm killing people, I still want to hurt myself, I still hate myself, like, your lessons didn't teach me shit, I thought they did, but you're full of bullshit and stuff.
I also think it might have something to do with Hoffman being a dick.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And antagonizing her all the time.
Yes, that is another thing that happens. Where we left off in the plot before we started talking about these characters again. But yeah, basically, Hoffman's been there from the beginning, even before Amanda. And I think John was like, I think this is John's point with Hoffman, is like, you've got the spirit, but not the right idea. So help me put people in traps, and then like we'll test them and blah blah blah. And and that's another thing that he says too, is that he's like, so as a detective, you know how many criminals end up back on the streets and end up back in jail and hurting people again and blah blah blah. So I think he does appeal to Hoffman's like moral code. Not that Hoffman really has one, but and it's proven that he doesn't have one in so many of the things that he does in these movies. But so Strom is running around and he figures out that Hoffman is in fact Jigsaw, but he doesn't tell anybody about it because Hoffman's in the process of framing Strom to look like he's the third Jigsaw minion.
Yep.
And so Strom is lured by Hoffman to a room with a glass coffin inside of it that's also filled with broken glass.
What is it with them and glass and this guy? Didn't he just have a glass
He
box
was
on
in a
his
glass
head?
box on his head.
He did. I don't know.
I think that might be Hoffman's being like, fuck you, you escaped the thing you weren't supposed to. Here's another box.
Well, because
I know.
in Saw... fuck, I don't know. It's Saw 6 or or maybe it's Saw 5. We see that John is the one who made the glass coffin. Like, you see the glass coffin in his workshop.
I wonder if it's the inverse then. I wonder if the glass cube is Hoffman trying to get that done before, but then he has to revert to John's trap.
But then why did John make the glass coffin at all? Because it doesn't make any sense except for this one specific thing.
Or it could have been for somebody. He just might have had the traps pre-made.
20-dimensional chess.
So Strom is lured into a room, and in the room there's a tape recorder hanging in the air, a glass coffin filled with broken glass, and he starts listening to the tape, and it's Hoffman on the tape. He doesn't even bother making his voice sound like Jigsaw, and he's like, "You got to get in the box, Strom, or you're gonna die." And Strom is like, "Fuck you." And then Hoffman shows up, and they have like a little bit of a scuffle, and Strom throws Hoffman into the box, the glass box, and the coffin closes and locks Hoffman inside of it, and Strom's like, "Haha, fuck you." And then, except he starts listening to the rest of the tape, and the rest of the tape is basically like, if you don't get in this box, you will die here, and I will make sure everybody thinks that you are Jigsaw. And then so the glass coffin like starts to like lower into this like secret safety pocket under the ground. And then the walls of the room start to close in and just smush Strom.
Yeah.
So, that's how Strom dies. But Strom, like, as the walls are closing in on him, he like scrolls his way up the wall because there's like a little bit of space up above, but not enough for him to escape from. So he like reaches up and grabs this grate that's above him, and the walls like crush him, but it leaves his hand like severed from his body, but fully intact.
Yeah.
So
That's how that scene would have ended in Star Wars.
Yes.
Yeah. We finally got to see what would happen to Luke Skywalker if he got crushed in the trash compactor.
But there probably wasn't like a sea monster hanging out too. That would have been too
unless
much.
you count Hoffman in the glass box in the safety pocket watching
He's
from
the sea
underneath.
monster.
He's the sea monster.
He's watching from below as he gets crushed.
It's a kind of cool visual where Hoffman's in the glass box and then Strom's blood starts to like pour on him and stuff. It's gross. I don't like watching that part because watching him get crushed is gross.
Because the way they purposefully make it like more difficult than it needs to be for him to get crushed, it's not.
Gross.
It's gross.
It's so gross. But what happened?
The hand.
So Hoffman takes the hand. He's able to, because Hoffman could have predicted this as well. He takes Strom's severed hand and puts it in like a refrigerator to use for later to frame him.
Yoink.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that that's more Strom thinking 4D chess ahead, and he's like, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna make sure Hoffman gets caught trying to frame me. Because that's I like that.
Okay,
I want it to be that way.
That can be your headcanon then.
Yeah. Because
I have a couple of headcanons about Saw myself, so
I tend to like Strom after the fourth movie.
Yeah. Strom is seems like a total dick in Saw 4, but in Saw 5 I thought he was pretty cool. But anyway, there's a couple of other very, very small things that happen but are very important that I need to address real quick. So Jill Tuck, in the fifth movie, John Kramer's wife, she's read John's will and is given a locked box, and she has a key that she wears as a necklace. She takes it off and is able to open the box, and then a video of John is played telling her that the contents of the box are of grave importance. But unfortunately for us audience members, we don't get to see what's in it. Also, like, would a lawyer be allowed to report something like this to the cops? Because, like,
he didn't really have anything to report, though.
There is client-lawyer confidentiality under the circumstances.
It's just a weird circumstance because he's like, yeah, like, I represented your husband, but I didn't know that he was a serial killer. And then you hand the serial killer's wife a box and with a video of a serial killer who is infamous for leaving videos behind of him being like, the contents are of grave importance. You must help me do this thing.
There's not really a crime that he could even... There's the confidentiality thing, and there's also, in that scene, no evidence of a crime being committed at that moment. It's just she's receiving a will.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I was just curious because, like, it's definitely shady business. And he even is like, do you mind telling me what's in the box? And she slams it shut and is like, thank you for your time, and leaves. I'm like, that's shady. And then Agent Perez, who I mentioned before, was Strom's partner, she was injured in Saw 4. She is pronounced dead in this movie. And then Hoffman, after being promoted for officially stopping the Jigsaw killer, goes to his office and finds an anonymous note there that says, I know who you are. What's that all about? We don't know. And you won't find out until Saw 7 what that means. But anyway, now we're on to Saw 6. Oh my god.
Oh Lord. You won't find out till Saw 7, but we're on to Saw 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carry on.
So more traps are happening and people are still dying, and the people of this fictional city, which vaguely seems like New York at times, are terrified. How can Jigsaw keep killing if he just died? And this is when we meet a man by the name of William Easton. He's an executive for the Umbrella Health Insurance Company, and the movie kind of cutely introduces us to every person who's going to be in this movie's game. But before we get to the game, we get some more Hoffman drama. Hoffman has been taking Strom's severed hand and leaving fingerprints behind at the crime scenes, and this brings the FBI back into the fold, especially because one of their own is leaving fingerprints at these crime scenes. This is when it's revealed to us and Hoffman that Agent Perez, Strom's partner, didn't actually die. The FBI just said that she did in order to help keep her safe. Agent Perez isn't so sure that Strom is the third Jigsaw minion, but everyone else seems to fully believe that he is. So Hoffman also has to deal with a very overeager reporter that somehow learns that Jill was left a box by Jigsaw in his will. And we also finally get to see what was in the box that John left for Jill in his will.
So they don't make you wait a whole other movie for that. Mm-mm. Okay.
No. So when she gets home, Jill, she's like, drinking, like with a glass of wine, playing old videos of her and John together, all happy, and she's crying as she's opening this box. And inside of the box, there are 6 envelopes, and envelopes are very important in these movies because anytime that they are there, that normally means they have pictures of people who are meant to be in games in them or traps in them.
You know what this is the opposite of romance to me. If my partner dies and leaves me a list of instructions, I'm going to be like, damn it. I thought I was finally done with that.
Oh.
Unless it's
a honeydew list after you're dead.
Unless it's like helpful instructions, not stuff for me to do for you, but stuff that'll help me. I want those.
I don't want tasks at all, Brie. I want to be left to just chill out. No jobs for me. I'll figure out how to pass the time from here on out.
Does it change if your husband and or wife in this scenario is a serial killer?
Nope. Same.
Okay.
I mean, we've been married. I'm done now.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't even touch it. I would just look at it all and be like, and just set it aside.
I wonder how the movies would have went if Jill did that. But then we kind of learn in this movie and later movies that Jill knew the whole time that he was like killing people, putting people in traps, and she just did nothing about it, and she was like kind of cool with it. It's like a whole thing. But
that does happen, Brie, in true crime.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It doesn't make absolute no sense. It makes an amount of sense, especially because one of the first people that he killed was the man who ended her birth, her child.
Yes. Her birth.
Sorry. I said that. I couldn't think of the word, and that's what I said. I'm so sorry.
So she has 6. I thought you were going to make fun of the fact that Jigsaw needs a separate envelope for every victim that he ever puts in a trap and stuff like that.
He does have a lot of money invested in envelopes.
They're like big envelopes, too. They're not small pictures.
Huge.
They're like the big, like...
He goes to the Office Depot on a regular basis.
That's where they should have been able to catch him.
Buys him by the gross, yeah. Who's buying all the envelopes here?
That was Amanda's job, or Hoffman's job, actually. So She takes them and hides them in her office at her rehabilitation clinic, waiting to give them the Hoffman. However, he shows up much sooner than she expected, and he demands the envelopes now and says the game starts tonight. Jill says that this isn't what John wanted, but Hoffman brushes her off and takes the envelopes and says from now on he works alone, and Jill seems fine with that. But for the clever Saw fans, such as myself, you can notice in the scene that Jill only gives Hoffman 5 envelopes, even though she was given 6. Oh, I wonder why. So we are also shown a few flashbacks in this moment and the rest of the movie that shows, I basically already said that Jill knew about everything. And that John even showed that Amanda was cured and stuff because Jill knew Amanda from her clinic. And so I think that it shows that Jill sort of also believed in the messaging of Jigsaw, but was always kept sort of to the side because John didn't want her to get too involved, even though he's in his will being like, get involved. But anyway, so William Easton, the CEO of the health insurance company, wakes up in his game. And well, even though we mentioned that this is the most political Saw and John's beliefs are truly stretched here, I absolutely love this game.
I agree.
I think this is one of my favorites. I just find it so much fun to watch him go through, and then I think that the acting and all the traps are like really good.
It's really
in this movie.
good, yeah.
I think it's awesome. And then this is also a really unique moment in the series because instead of Billy the doll appearing to give William his instructions, it's John himself, and William definitely recognizes John. So he explains that William has 60 minutes to make it to the end of the game or the bomb strapped to both of his arms and his legs will detonate. William isn't alone in this game, however. He wakes up strapped in a strange machine that has 2 big chunks of metal, or 2 big hunks of metal, like clamped around his chest. And he looks to his left and he sees the janitor of Umbrella Health. The janitor, stuck in an identical trap. And so this is the one that I was making fun of in the first episode, where the man, his only crime was that he was a smoker and that he was a janitor for this health insurance company that John didn't like.
But the trap really lends into the fact that he was a smoker, and I think it's kind of funny.
Yeah, so obviously John Jigsaw, Jake Hammerschmidt wants.
It's impossible to not finish now.
So he obviously wants William to go through this entire game. So normally that means, like, in these games where one person has to go through, they are not normally in much danger. However, he puts him in this trap, and the trap is literally a hold your breath contest between a healthy William and a chunky smoker janitor. So like Jigsaw basically sentenced this man to death for smoking and being a janitor at this health insurance company. Where the fuck was his chance to live? And then what if that guy had the fucking amazing will to live that gave him the will to hold his breath for longer than he possibly could and beat William? Then what? Then your whole game would have been fucked.
I think it's just impossible because he no longer has the lung capacity anymore. Because the way that the trap worked is that, like, if the air gauge got to a certain point, it would start to crush.
Yeah, every time they took a breath, the metal would like clamp in harder and harder.
There's no way that smoker's surviving off of little tiny breaths like the other dude could.
No, you're right. So, but I'm just saying, like in this AU, what would have happened?
That's alternate it. The smoker goes through the rest of the game. He doesn't learn any lesson.
He's just like, what the fuck's
going on? He just bumbles his way through like Jeff all over
again.
Why
is the janitor to blame for any of this?
Everybody else is just like, what are you doing here?
It's also so lame because it's like that guy was just doing a job. It's not like he had anything to do with what the health insurance company was up to. But anyway, like that's why this movie in particular really is like, it just kind of throws John's morals out the window.
But it's ironically one of the best movies, I think.
Yeah, this woman has cancer. Ask the janitor if we should deny her claim or not. He says deny. All right, I was going to let her have the money, but okay. If the janitor says so.
That guy over there who's smoking in the corner.
He knows. He knows.
He says deny. Anyway. Of course William is the one that lives and is allowed to... So every time he, like, completes one of his little tests, one of the games and challenges that he has to go through, he gets a key and is able to take off one of the explosive devices from his arms and his arms and his legs. But so he takes off one of the things on his wrist, and it says the party on it, like tattooed on him, the party. And then he gets a flashback of how John and William met each other. So John and William first met when he sponsored a party at Jill's clinic. This is when William explains to John that he came up with a formula that determines who is healthy enough to receive healthcare coverage or not. And John says to him, so you get to determine who lives or dies. But William kind of dismisses him and is like, it's not like that. Then later, we learn that this was the health insurance that John was using. And John was a cancer patient, but he was denied coverage for an experimental cancer treatment. And John went to William, pleading with him to overturn the ruling and let him try this treatment, but William refused. And John took that personally. And now this is an actual direct quote from the movie. I sat there with the movie on at typing what John said during this part, because it is so... This is a Saw movie.
Did you know that in the Far East, people pay their doctors when they're healthy? When they're sick, they don't have to pay. So basically, they end up paying for what they want, not what they don't want. We have it all ass backwards here. These politicians say the same thing over and over again. Healthcare decisions should be made by the doctors and their patients, not by the government. Well, now I know they're not made by doctors and their patients or by the government. They're made by the fucking insurance companies.
And I just want to point out that John ends this super serious monologue by pointing at a fish tank in William's office and says,
Piranha.
I forgot about that. You're right.
I was rewatching it a couple times to write it down. The man has a fucking fish tank full of piranhas.
Yeah.
Like an Austin Powers villain.
In his office.
Yeah.
That's how John ends the monologue. He takes
Freaking
like a tiny
lasers
pause.
on those piranhas.
He takes a tiny pause and goes, piranha. Like,
Yeah.
He says it like the little girl in Finding Nemo.
Finding Nemo, yeah.
It's so weird. But this exchange does end with a very badass line of John saying,
You think it's the living that will have ultimate judgment over you, because the dead will have no claim over your soul. But you may be mistaken.
William should have known the second it came out that John Kramer was, and on top of all that, like, having John said all of that directly to William, so William should have known the second it came out that John Kramer was Jigsaw that he would have ended up in a trap. I would have been as far away from this fictional city as possible. But the rest of the game involves William having to make choices on who lives and dies and testing his formula for deciding healthcare coverage in the real world. And I say real world with quotation marks because it's in a jigsaw trap, not the real world. Anyway, and I'm going through each of the traps in this movie in particular because I think it's important to just point out just how contradictory all of these traps are to John's methodology, and also because I like this movie.
It's very good.
So the second trap, counting the hold your breath trap as the first, is two people who have barbed wire nooses around their neck and are standing on planks, and William must decide which one gets to live, otherwise they both die. So who he must choose between is his older secretary with some health problems, but a huge family that loves her very, very much. And then the other is a young, healthy file clerk, but has no family, and according to Jigsaw, would disappear without a blip on this world's radar. And so William ends up picking his secretary. But what the fuck?
Yeah, I know.
That's so fucked up. What the fuck, Jigsaw?
It's...
This guy had his whole life ahead of him. He could have made a family at a certain point.
This whole one is a lot of contradictions because it's kind of like he's punishing the people around him a lot more than he's punishing him.
Yeah, and it's not like either of these people did anything wrong. They just worked at this health insurance company. And it's not like they were higher ups that could make these decisions.
No.
One was a secretary and one was a file clerk. So it's like, it's crazy. So the next trap is William has to help his lawyer out of a maze that is blocked off at parts with boiling hot steam shooting out of the pipes, and he must burn himself to help her get through. She succeeds until she learns that the device around her neck that will kill her has a key that is surgically placed inside of William, so then she attempts to murder him, but doesn't get to before her trap goes off and then she dies. So the next trap, and it's probably my favorite in the entire series. Good. So, it's called the Carousel, and it has 6 of William, and remember, this is all 6, so it has 6 of William's employees chained to it.
None of this is contrived at all. Go on.
No, of course not. Contrived is never a word I would use to describe the Saw movies, but maybe masterpiece would be a word I would use to describe, but
the characters knew that these would be sequentially ordered into movie form.
Yeah, exactly. It has 6 of Williams' employees chained to it as it spins around and around. These employees are special because they are the ones that find discrepancies in people's insurance applications and can find the smallest, pettiest reasons to cancel their health insurance, which we see an example of in the beginning of the movie. Well, when the carousel stops spinning, it sets one of these people in front of a shotgun, and William can press a button only twice that will cause the shotgun to shoot up in the air and spare that person from being shot. So that means only 2 of these people are leaving this carousel alive. And once they all learn that, they all start arguing with one another, begging William to save them, lying about why they should live, even trying to bribe William. And it's like, it is a crazy scene watching these people interact with each other and scream at each other. And I love it.
It's honestly one of the best acted scenes in any Saw movie.
Awesome. And it's kind of cool too, because like when William presses the button, it stabs his hand, and Jigsaw says it's a decision symbolized by the blood on your hands, and then he literally has like blood on his hands. It's kind of cool. I think it's fun. Oh, God. So, meanwhile, while William is doing all of these things, the nosy reporter that was mentioned earlier is trapped in a cage, presumably at the end of the maze that William is running through, as well as a woman and her son. Once William makes it through his maze, he ends up in a cage in between these 2 other cages, and this is when it's revealed that the woman and her son are related to the man who died because William's company kicked him off his health insurance that I neglected to mention. It was a very small thing earlier. And Jigsaw gives them the choice of killing William or sparing him, and the woman chooses to spare him, but the son doesn't. So he flips a switch and seals William's fate as flashbacks explaining the movie to you, that explain the movie that we just saw to you. Replay John's quote again: "You think it's the living that will have the ultimate judgment over you, because the dead will have no claim over your soul, but you may be mistaken." And which is also really fucking frustrating, though, because it's like the whole point of Saw 3 was about not living for revenge. And then so this whole trap is essentially, or game, is John essentially getting revenge on William and then letting these 2 people, who are innocent people, kill this man.
And the reporter is his sister.
Oh, yeah, the reporter.
So she has to watch him die. And it's kind of like, this is one of the few times where this man clearly is, like, changed. Like, this man, by the end of it, is like, I'm never doing any... Like, he's going to leave... he's going to leave the company. And he gets there. And it's these 2 people. He does all of that. And it's just left for 2 other random people to decide if he passes or fails his test. Not based on anything he did previously.
Yeah, it's... They just completely forgot the moral. They forgot the plot in this one, in this Saw movie. So while all of that other drama is happening, we have been learning that Hoffman is not nearly as smart as John was, but luckily for Hoffman, the FBI are also fucking idiots. So he joins them in their investigation, where they learn that in the newest Jigsaw crime scene, the jigsaw piece cut from the victim's skin was cut with a lacerated edged knife, but every other trap used surgical knife to cut the puzzle piece. Well, out of every other trap besides Seth Baxter's, the only other trap that Hoffman solo killed on. So the FBI decided to look into that tape that came with Seth Baxter's murder to see if someone else recorded that tape other than John Kramer. They then learned that there was like a funky residue on Strom's fingerprint that proved that Strom was already dead when he was like leaving his fingerprints at the crime scene. And they learn this right as they unscramble the tape to hear Hoffman's voice on it, and then Hoffman is in the room with them and goes literally berserk and kills everyone in the room. Like, takes his knife and just stabs everybody, kills everybody, and then burns down the entire fucking building. I think that's what happens.
It's the perfect crime.
Yeah.
Stabbing and then arsony?
When the cops catch you to, just burn down the police station.
And I think it's even funnier because he, like, when he, like, stabs Perez, he's like, who else knows? And she's like, everyone.
Yeah, everyone. And he's like, you liar. And then he stabs her a couple times. It's so fucked up. It's crazy.
It's insane. You people have clearly submitted no reports.
Exactly. Well, it's like if they did, because the scene implies that they are kind of suspicious of him at this point, then why the fuck would you bring him here without any other backup or anything?
Movies.
And also the fact that, like, no other crime scene ever had a jigsaw fingerprint, and now all of a sudden Strom is leaving fingerprints everywhere.
That's why I'm telling you,
They're
Strom
so
thought
fucking
ahead.
stupid.
He left his hand there.
Oh, yeah, okay. And while all that was happening, Jill has been very busy as well. There was a couple of extra things in that box that she was given, her box that she was given in the will, besides envelopes. Another tape addressed to somebody not revealed to the audience, and a newer version of the reverse bear trap. Earlier in the movie, she was also given a mysterious note by an overeager reporter that we won't get to see until later. Jill drops off the tape to the mysterious person and then heads to where the game is being played, an abandoned zoo. So once Hoffman is done with his literal murder spree, he rushes back to the zoo to see the very end of the game, and then this is what we get to see what note Jill left behind, and it's the letter from Saw 3 that Amanda read that made her very upset. If you remember correctly, Amanda read a letter at the very end of Saw 3.
That takes some patience right there.
We finally get to see what it says. It was a letter to Amanda from Hoffman that said he knew she was there the night that Cecil killed their baby. And if Amanda doesn't kill Lynn, the doctor, that Hoffman will tell John that she was also responsible for the death of their baby. So Amanda listened to Hoffman, and that's why she failed her test. So Jill then Hoffman sits down in the chair to read this note that was left behind and being like, oh shit, how did they find this? And so Jill electrocutes him and incapacitates him, knocks him out. She then straps him up and places a reverse bear trap on Hoffman's head, and she reveals to him that the 6th envelope was left for her and that he was the target. She says to Hoffman, game over. Oh, she says this is John's will, and then game over, and closes the door, leaving Hoffman for dead. Hoffman, however, is a fucking maniac and uses the trap to break his hand so he's able to untie himself from his chair, and he tries super hard to get the bear trap off his head, but he can't, so he smashes his head through the glass window of this door that, luckily, because it's a zoo, had bars on it, so he sticks the bear trap in between these 2 bars, and the bear trap opens and catches itself on these 2 bars, not completely ripping his head apart, and he's able to slide his head out of it, even though his cheek is completely ripped open. And that's how Saw 6 ends, is with a very, very, very pissed off Hoffman.
Graphically maimed.
Mm-hmm. And also killed all those people. And then also announcing that Jill put Hoffman in the trap. And this is where I got very confused, because I feel like it implies that John knew that Hoffman had rigged Amanda's game but didn't do anything about it, but then wanted Hoffman punished for it in case of his death.
Yep.
So set up all of these things so that, and the tape recorder in his stomach, because the tape recorder starts playing again, saying you think that you're going to walk away untested, Hoffman, and because Hoffman kept being haha, I didn't have to do a jigsaw test to Amanda in order to be a jigsaw minion.
I was telling Savannah in the car, I know exactly why all of this happens this way, but I don't know if we have time to share that.
I mean, basically, it's just, so because it was implied, I feel like it's implied that this was John's plan, but then people on Reddit were suggesting that Jill went away from John's plans, but I feel no, John ordered Hoffman's execution.
And I think he left it in Jill's hands because Jill was the wrong party in the whole thing.
Yeah. Anyway, but that's another. So Saw 6, Hoffman is still alive, but John wanted him dead. So John miscalculated something there, or did he? So we've made it to the final chapter, where we have been told that all of our questions will be answered, and the biggest one that Saw fans want answered is what happened to Dr. Gordon. Well, this movie starts with us getting to watch Dr. Gordon crawling out of the bathroom and using a steaming pipe to cauterize the leg that he just cut his foot off of.
Wait, they got the actor back?
They did. Carrie Elwes came back for this movie.
Wow. So they resolved their,
I guess,
legal quandary.
Yeah,
I imagine they had to.
And maybe they offered him a ton of money to do it too.
They really wanted this guy.
They wanted it. Dr. Gordon is mentioned in pretty much every Saw movie. He's one of the most important characters, but is only in Saw 1 and 7 because of Carrie Elwes.
All right.
But so we see him cauterize his wound, but then that's all we get to see of him for now. So now, because this is Saw 7 and the final chapter, they go all out with the most insane traps that you've ever seen, and there are so many of them in this movie, including a trap that features the late lead singer of Linkin Park, Chester Bennington.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I know. It's I really liked Linkin Park when I was younger. Mm-hmm. And then there's one really goofy trap that is set in a public place, like in an outlet mall, essentially. And these two guys with these saws, and they have to either kill each other or kill their cheating girlfriend, and then so they're like fighting each other, and then they're like, oh, she's not worth it, man. And then it's like one of the best like one-liners in the series where the lady is like, what the hell are you doing, when they actively choose to kill her, and then one dude goes, I think we're breaking up with you, Dina.
I forgot about that.
Cuts her in half. Meanwhile, all these people, because it's happening in public, all these people are watching. How the fuck did anybody do that? How the fuck did they get them there? It's so stupid.
How did they not call someone?
Well, you see one woman on the phone being like, yeah, and then you see another woman with a briefcase, and they're like, break the glass, and she like half-heartedly hits the glass with her briefcase, and then otherwise everyone is just sitting there watching. It's a weird scene. It's really weird scene.
I don't know that that's actually, I mean, in such an elaborate scenario, yes, I know humans can gawk, but
I can see outside of this world, if we were to come across that now, like in our reality, it would seem like some like live art installation. But in the world of Jigsaw,
right.
In the world of Jigsaw, though,
right.
Unless it's like in memoriam of Jigsaw,
Yeah,
like
right.
art installation. I don't know. It's,
Well,
Marina Abramovich was just a big fan and decided to stage something.
right? Yeah.
And there's no curtain or anything hiding it. Like, so these two people are all knocked out, or these three people are all knocked out until they wake up, and that's when people start to come around and being like, oh, what is this? Like, it's really strange.
So maybe they thought it was an art installation.
All right.
So yeah, once we get our beginning trap out of the way, it shows us what happened again at the end of Saw 6 for the people who have never seen a Saw movie before, because they're going to be
This
very
is the time
confused.
to start, right?
This is the time to start.
Absolutely. Let's jump right in.
So anyways, we see Hoffman escape his trap again, and we see it from Jill's point of view, where she sees him break through the door and escape, and she runs, and she's like, oh shit, I'm gonna die. And luckily for her, Hoffman is preoccupied with fixing up his wound, so he doesn't find her, and she is able to escape. She rushes to the police, where we're introduced to a new cop that we've literally never seen before, and his name... Oh yeah, because literally every other cop that we've ever known is dead or is Jigsaw, is Hoffman. So this man's name is Matt Gibson, and she manages to get immunity and protection from the police in exchange for giving evidence that Hoffman is the other Jigsaw minion. Gibson takes her into protective services and begins to search for Mark Hoffman. Meanwhile, Hoffman is still, for some reason, putting people in traps for John, even though he was told that John wanted him dead. Like, he's still doing Jigsaw's work. And so we get to meet our players in this movie's game. And I personally really love this game as well. So we meet Bobby Dagan, a Jigsaw survivor who has written a book about his time in the trap and made a ton of money off of it, and now is on talk shows and meeting with other Jigsaw survivors. And it's not cute isn't the right word, but it's a cute scene for like people who are Saw fans and have seen every movie, because like the survivor group that Bobby goes to talk to, okay, Christ almighty, that Bobby goes to talk to.
I got nothing to say.
You better not.
You went in for it and then just went
I did. I'm here for it, but you know, booby Q trap.
Yep.
Maybe that's what I was thinking. I don't know. But so almost everyone who's in this circle of like Jigsaw survivors at this group are people that we've seen who survived other traps in like other movies and stuff. And this is also when we get some fantastic one-liners that Saw 7 just has the most amazing one-liners in it. And this one is, you want to know the best thing that happened to me when I was forced to cut off my own arm? It's handicap parking at the damn mall.
Oh, is that the girl from the lump of flesh?
Yes,
yeah. Or pound of flesh, or whatever.
Bobby puts on a big show about how they're all survivors and they're strong and they can have a new positive perspective on life, but is interrupted by another Jigsaw survivor who was sitting in a very dark corner of the room. It's Dr. Gordon, and he does a slow clap to reveal that he's there. And he stands there, and then he stands and approaches Bobby walking with a cane. He says to him, "Bravo. To be able to sustain such a traumatic experience and yet find the positive in that grisly act is a remarkable feat indeed, if not a little perverse. I'm sure I speak for everyone here when I say how grateful we are to be a part of your promotional DVD." And he says it just like that. Like, it's just like that. And like does a slow clap, and all the other survivors join in because they're filming this Jigsaw like meeting or whatever, is why he says the promotional DVD thing. So as Bobby is leaving this place, he is jumped by a person in a pig mask, and then he wakes up in his game and then revealed to the audience that Bobby was never actually in a trap. He just saw survivors tell their stories on the news, and then he and his friends thought that they could make a ton of money selling those stories, which they have. But now Jigsaw essentially says, "Oh, you want to say you were in a trap? Well, I'll put you in a trap."
Dead Jigsaw says this.
Well, so that's another thing, is that Bobby apparently wrote this book while the Jigsaw Killer was still alive and still active.
Okay, all right. So that's how he, through his 20-dimensional chess, was able to anticipate that eventually he would create DVDs and that a pigman could capture him outside of the room where he's meeting all the victims.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. I mean, and this is the flashback that I was talking about in the first one, where it's like, it's the oldest that Tobin Bell has ever been, and yet it's got to be like the youngest that Jigsaw has ever been. And he goes to a book signing that Bobby is doing for his book, and Jigsaw is there talking to him, basically telling him, like, I know you're lying. And Bobby's like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about and stuff. And that's the one where Jigsaw's dressed in a big hoodie and a backwards hat.
Yep.
He's
backwards
like, I'm
baseball
gonna wait
cap.
several years until after I've died, and then I will get my revenge on you.
Exactly. But then also, how fucking stupid do you have to be to pretend you were a Jigsaw victim? Like that.
Yeah, it's sort of like asking him.
The bear.
Yeah.
Yes, he was asking for it.
Yeah.
He was begging to be put in a trap.
I do wonder why he waited so long to have that trap enacted.
Because it didn't exist until they decided to write this script.
Not that we're slut-shaming him, by the way. Not slut-shaming
I know.
Booby.
This is the only time that the phrase "they asked for it" is deserved.
Yeah, no, I feel like we can shame him a little bit here.
No, for Bobby. He deserves to be shamed because, oh my God, how fucking stupid do you have to be to do this? In a world where Jigsaw exists and has probably killed like hundreds of people at this point, what the fuck are you doing? And so his game is that he has to go through this maze and save each of his friends who helped him create this story and become famous from these symbolic traps of the role that they played in creating the scam. And he must do all of this within an hour to make it to his wife, who is chained up at the end of the game. The movie then also reveals to us that this woman, his wife, had no idea that she was being lied to this entire time by her husband. She met him after he was supposedly in the trap and thought she was helping a man recover from a super traumatic experience, but now she's in a Jigsaw trap because of his stupid decisions.
I'd be pissed.
So it's really interesting, though, because this game really has no bearing on the plot as a whole. It just kind of happens in the movie. It just happens because the Saw movies demand that there's a game that happens, but this game has no effect on the wider plot whatsoever. So the real plot is Gibson trying to find Hoffman while Hoffman is on a mission to kill Jill Tuck as revenge for putting him in the trap. And there's a lot of back and forth of this that is honestly kind of boring because we don't really know who Gibson is, and he's kind of unlikable too. He's got some funny lines such as, she looks crazier than a sack full of cats, and I knew you were crazy the moment I laid eyes on you. Crazy.
Wow.
He just calls people crazy a lot.
He says the word crazy so many times in this movie.
Minor in psychology.
Yeah.
So Gibson puts Jill in a protective house, but Hoffman reveals he knows where that is, so then Gibson takes Jill and puts her in a cell in the police station guarded by a ton of cops. Well, that doesn't stop Hoffman. He lures Gibson into a trap where he loaded a machine gun to go off and shoots him and all the cops that he brought in the room with him. Hoffman then sneaks his way into the police station in a body bag. So the police thought that they were bringing in a Jigsaw victim, but Hoffman took the body out while they were all distracted and hid in the body bag. So then Hoffman proceeds to then go on a rampage and kill literally every single person in that police station. And it's an actual rampage. Like, I swear it has to be like 10 plus people that this man murders in this movie. And he just goes room to room in the police station killing everyone.
You'd think that those people should have had a gun on them.
I know.
You know.
Well, he's just sneaky. He was that sneaky.
He kills them quietly.
Yeah, he's this big bulky dude. He's so sneaky.
And he takes his knife and stabs them in the neck so they can't scream, you know? So they don't even have enough time to pull out their guns.
Gotcha.
So
he's just that good, Rob.
That's a gun control ad right there.
But he finally gets to Jill, and he is about to kill her, but she stabs him with a nail file that she was allowed to have in her cell for whatever reason, and she runs away and she tries to hide in the evidence room where all of the weapons are. Jill's also so stupid. And then Hoffman finds her almost instantly, beats the shit out of her, and then he sees that one of the confiscated Jigsaw weapons in that room is the very original reverse bear trap. He ties Jill up, places it on her head, and the fans finally get to see that trap kill somebody. Jill Tuck, Jigsaw's beloved wife, is now dead, and Hoffman says, "Game over." We also get to see the results of Bobby's game. He saves literally no one, not for a lack of trying though, unlike some people. Jeff. His final test is that he must. So in Bobby's book, the trap that he had to escape from was that he had to take these hooks and put them through his pectoral muscles and use these chains to hoist himself up to this platform so that he could escape. So Jigsaw is like, okay, do that. Except instead of getting up to a platform, he has to put the hooks into his muscles and get himself up to like a plug that's up there. And if he manages to plug it in, it will release his wife from the trap that she's in. And so he gets all the way up to the top before the hooks and his muscles aren't able to support his weight, and it rips through his flesh and he falls to the ground. Now he's okay, but as soon as he falls to the ground, the timer runs out and his wife is killed in this fucking Jigsaw trap. And she's not just killed in just like a normal Jigsaw trap. It's a fucking brazen bull. He puts this poor woman who did literally zip zero things wrong in one of the worst ways ever to die. It's crazy.
This is part of why I think Hoffman's enacting of John's plans is a lot more of like Hoffman fucking up John's plans as the movies go on. Because I don't know that he would do that to somebody like that unless it was the man himself. Even then.
But it's Jigsaw's voice that we hear.
Yeah, I know.
And it's implied that
But we know that Hoffman does the Jigsaw editing to his voice too.
That's true. I don't know. I feel it. Well, hang on. Let me say this part real fast. So then we get to see what Hoffman is up to after killing Jill and literally the entire police force of this city. He goes to his workshop, packs up all of his things, blows up the building. He blows up another building. And did I forget to mention that this movie is in 3D, so it adds all these like cheesy 3D effects to it. And as he's leaving, he's jumped by 3 people in pig masks. He is supposed to be the last Jigsaw person alive, but he's jumped by 3 people in pig masks. He is sedated, and right before he passes out, one of the men takes off his mask to reveal their identity. Do you want to take a guess at who it is?
It's the good doctor.
Yeah, it is the Dr. Gordon.
Why are you so surprised? These movies are pretty
that you're
telegraphed.
paying attention.
I think we're just excited. I think
Yeah.
Savannah's just excited
I'm also
that she
excited,
guessed it.
And
That you're paying attention. All I've ever wanted, Rob, is for you to listen to me
That's why
rant
I
about
made
the
this
plot
podcast.
of these movies. I know,
So
but not for this specific topic.
No.
No.
Well, because
Just
I
for
wanted
all
to talk
of them,
about
though.
Saul
All
that
the
badly.
topics, yeah.
But and Hoffman literally says what everyone in the audience is saying. What the fuck?
Yeah.
So that we then get a flashback.
Are they saying that, or isn't that expected from the very beginning of the movie?
Well, I guess maybe, but it's also like if you just take a second to think about it, it makes no fucking sense that Dr. Gordon. The flashbacks.
We have to reverse engineer it. We're in yet another Zelda game, and the Japanese folks are like, "Oh, no, this doesn't make any sense."
I also think they got
It's
so
another timeline.
excited that they got Carrie Elwes back.
Yeah, that they were like, we have to make him
It is the
minion.
most satisfying conclusion, but it doesn't make any sense, and they
Yeah.
just don't care.
Yeah,
Fine,
no,
screw
and they
it.
don't care.
We'll
And-
figure it out later.
Yeah, and so we get to see in the flashback that Jill had delivered that tape in the 6th movie to an undisclosed person. That undisclosed person was Dr. Gordon. And so we get to see Dr. Gordon watch the tape, and it's revealed to us that John saved Dr. Gordon and made him one of his minions as well, but never told anyone about him, not Amanda or Hoffman. Dr. Gordon also apparently helped with pretty much every trap, especially the ones that required surgery to be done, like the key behind the eye, or a trap where this man's eyes had to be stitched closed, and blah, blah, blah. So John says, as his last will, that he wants the doctor to watch over Jill, and if anything happens to her, that he must move immediately, and in exchange he'll keep no more secrets from him, including being shown the location of where the bathroom that he was trapped in all those years ago, where that bathroom is.
That's all he's wanted to know.
Apparently.
Is the location of the bathroom where he was one time trapped.
As if it matters that much
I would like to see that bathroom again someday.
He just wants his decomposed foot back. I don't know.
Well, that's where Dr. Gordon takes Hoffman. He chains Hoffman up next to Adam's decomposing body, which is still there, and some others that ended up there, and like Saw 2, there were some people who died there. Hoffman tries to go for the saw from the first movie, but Gordon moves it out of his reach and throws it into the hallway with this cheesy 3D effect, and he says, "I don't think so." Hoffman begins to scream. He's like, "You can't do this to me!" But Dr. Gordon just turns around, smiles at him, and says, "Game over," and then slams the door shut, and the credits begin to roll.
All right.
And that's how the Saw series ends.
Okay.
Except Jigsaw came out in 2017 and was a moderate success financially. And so Jigsaw feels like an attempt to reboot the series, but I don't think it really succeeded in doing that. But the big draw of Jigsaw and the marketing for it was that it was 10 years after John Kramer died, and the world has been safe from Jigsaw's terror since Mark Hoffman disappeared. But suddenly another game is happening. The voice that is on the tapes the police are receiving is John Kramer's. The victims they find have blood under their fingernails, and it's John Kramer's. They dig up John's grave to prove that he's dead, and it's not his body who's in there, but another victim's. How is this possible? Is Jigsaw back from the dead? Did John Kramer have a twin brother? What is going on? So that's when the police are... so that's the plot of the movie is basically the police trying to figure out how the fuck this is happening. And I'm not going to go into like crazy details about the movie or anything. This movie isn't very exciting trap wise. I also feel like it's a really toned down and like overproduced Saw movie. Like this movie is too colorful. It's clean looking. Like they use flat screen TVs in some of the traps, which is like Jigsaw always uses those really old school looking things and stuff. And part of watching a Saw movie is seeing how like dark and grainy everything looks, and that movie just isn't really that. I still think it's fun, but it's sort of separate from the rest of the Saw movies, especially since it's so far removed from the timeline of the Saw movies. Like it takes place 10 years later, and it came out in 2017, so that's 7 years after the last Saw 7 came out. The big twist of this movie is that the game that we're watching take place actually was John Kramer's very first game that he ever made over 10 years ago. One of the examples of the movie just actively lying to you. He had it play out at an old pig farm owned by Jill's family, and the bodies were never found. One of the victims, Logan...
See, it wasn't Chinese at all. It was a biographical detail. That's how he ended up with the masks.
No. He got it. He was literally at a Chinese New Year festival where he picked up a pig mask.
And yet, the pig farm is right in the family.
Oh yeah, I know. Well, retroactively, yes.
Which came first?
To be fair, I think that's how he decided to make the pigs' masks, because they're pretty piggy.
Yeah, pretty piggy. So this bomb's about to go off. We need to finish this episode.
Yeah, you're right.
So
bring it on home.
One of his victims, Logan Nelson, had accidentally switched the name on John's x-ray with another patient, so they could have found John's cancer sooner and saved him, but this mistake by Nelson sealed John's fate. He put Nelson in a trap, but Nelson, it's kind of funny because it's one of those games where it's like a bunch of people having to work together to do stuff and everything. He just never woke up in the beginning. Like the chains start dragging people away, and you actually see the people in the trap being like, wake up, you're gonna die, but he's still asleep because I guess John gave him too many sedatives. And so John felt bad, so he manages to save him last second before all the other people, and none of the other people see John save him. He was surely going to die, but then John felt bad that he shouldn't have to die over one simple mistake, so he saved him and took him in. So Logan Nelson is actually the first Jigsaw minion to exist. And the only reason that he isn't in any of the other movies was because he was a medical person in the military and was sent to Fallujah, where he became a prisoner of war for a bit.
I was going to say he was on vacation, but you pretty much did just do that in a Saw way, like a bad vacation.
Yeah, like you see Saw like stitching him up because he did get wounded in the trap, but John saved him before he died. And for it just doesn't explain. It's just like he wakes up with John saving him, and he's just like, "That's cool that you put me in the trap. It's all good." And then it shows them working together to build the reverse bear trap. And like, yeah, I know Brie hasn't seen this movie, so I knew that this twist would piss you off. I hate this fact. So the movie, so the trap that you're seeing, so he's in Fallujah, and then he comes back. John Kramer is dead. All that business is done. Whatever.
He's a prisoner of war for 10 years.
I don't know how long he was a prisoner of war.
Oh, okay.
But he comes back in time for John to be dead.
Yes.
Okay.
But yeah, they were like, they keep saying how, like, oh, his mind's all fucked up because he was a prisoner of war. I'm like, oh, my mind would probably be fucked up too if I was a prisoner of war for a bit.
Yeah, but he decided to be the guy before that, right?
Yes. Well, he decided to work with Jigsaw before that, but
then he was a prisoner of war.
Was sent to Fallujah, yeah.
What difference does it make? He was a serial killer before he left. What is a prisoner of war going to make it any worse?
Did he only get to do the reverse bear trap before he left?
He didn't actually help, like, put people in traps.
He just built the
He helped build the traps. He helped build the traps.
Still.
Yeah, no, it's stupid. It doesn't make any sense.
He's a serial killer.
Yes,
basically a serial killer.
No, he's definitely a serial killer, and he's okay with serial killing.
Right.
But he...
But he gets worse because he's a prisoner of war.
No, I wasn't suggesting that. The cops keep saying that he acts weird, and then the other cop is like...
that's like the explanation.
Yeah, one cop is like...
He's not a serial killer. He was just a prisoner of war.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing I was making. Sorry. Yeah, one cop is like, man, that guy acts kind of weird. He's kind of suspicious. And then the other cop's like, no, he was a prisoner of war. He's cool.
We here at Strange Ride are fans of prisoners of war. We're here for you guys.
We don't think you're serial killers, but...
we love you guys. Brie? No?
No,
Yes?
I do agree with that.
Okay,
but
good.
Yeah, I do.
All right.
This movie, I also just like, why does there need to be another Jigsaw minion? Why? Who is this man? I don't give a shit about this man. But so he sees dirty cops all the time getting away with their crimes. So he decides to become the new Jigsaw and recreate that trap that John put him in all those years ago. He then pulls some 40 chess moves and frames the cop that he had the most trouble with to look like he was the copycat killer. But then the series implies that it will continue with this dweeb as Jigsaw, and nope, that's not what I want. I want Jigsaw to come back from the grave, god damn it. Also, where the fuck is John's body? He dug up John's body to put some other asshole's victim there? Like, it's so dumb. I think the twist in that is so dumb. I hate the idea of there being another Jigsaw victim that we just never knew about.
I'm too exasperated by the idea of it to even be mad right now.
Yeah.
I'm just... Why?
It got so convoluted and messy within the family. You know, the incestiness of having to come up with explanations for past ones. I think... if I were the people creating this, I would have done a similar move and just get outside the cast as we've known them.
Yeah.
But it is frustrating because it's now completely out of character with what they've done.
Yeah.
For all.
And I just feel like they could have made more sense if they were going to do that.
Yeah, and then also it's like they're implying that they want the series to continue with this guy, and like none of us care about this guy. We all care about John Kramer, which I think they learned from that lesson because the next actual Saw movie that they would make, not counting Spiral, features John Kramer heavily. But for Spiral's sake, not for Spiral's sake, for context sake, Spiral. This movie came out Jigsaw came out in 2017, Spiral came out in 2021, and then the crown jewel, the Saw franchise, Saw X, came out in 2023. And I say the crown jewel sort of jokingly. It's still a Saw movie. It's not a great movie, but I really like this one. It takes itself like a little bit too seriously, so it's not like the goofier Saw movies, but it obviously really, really cares about the characters, and it features John, and it's awesome. It's so... I'm not going to go crazy into the details for this one, too. I think if you liked listening to me tell all these other things, you should watch Saw X, Saw 10. I thought it was fun. But John is looking for any way to cure his cancer, and he finds this really... what would it be called? He finds this like treatment that he thinks would actually work and be really viable for him, and like it's the daughter of this doctor who's like super amazing and blah blah blah. Her name is Cecilia Peterson, and they talk on the phone, and she's like, you would be great for this, but the healthcare companies, they're trying to kill us because they don't want us to cure cancer because they make money off of cancer or whatever. So John has to fly all the way to Mexico to go to this like secret lab where they operate on him and they take his cancer out, and meanwhile he's got brain cancer. So he wakes up and then realizes that they did not actually perform surgery on him. They just stole like all of his money. And that's a pretty, you fucked up real bad when you fucked over the Jigsaw killer like that.
And yet 20D chess should have seen that coming.
That's fair. But they go way out of their way to make it seem as legit as possible. I will say the movie, well, I mean, and maybe that's also the movie actively lying to you as well. But, and that was another thing rewatching it, because I watched it like 3 times in a row just to like get it in there in my brain. And I'm like, how much money can you possibly make doing this when you have to pay all these people to help you do this?
Yeah, he's not a rich man.
Well, that's what the people who do that in real life do.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, it's a big thing with cancer, fake cancer research and fake HIV/AIDS researchers.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, it's a whole thing.
Oh.
There's a whole series about doctors who do this stuff. There's podcast series about it. Yeah.
Yeah,
fake doctors.
It's pretty fucked up. And I think that's another thing that's fun about Saw 10 is that, like, we just get to see fucked up people in these fucked up traps. And, like, John is sort of doing the revenge thing, but also, like, you guys are fucked up. Like, you guys are bad people.
So it feels
and
good.
are stealing all these people's money and shit. So it's like, yeah. And so every person that he met, they get put in a trap, and the traps are fucking brutal in this game. They are so gross. Like, I could barely watch the movie at points. Like, there's one guy who, like, he was the brain surgeon or whatever. His fucking game is John gives him 2 minutes to take a drill and cut into his own skull to pull out a piece of his brain.
Ugh.
I'm so excited to watch this one. I don't think you understand. I haven't seen it yet.
2 minutes to do that? I'd just kill me. I'd spend my entire 2 minutes being like, fuck you, John Kramer. Fuck this shit. Goodbye, cruel world.
I just wouldn't even begin to comprehend how I would do that. Less of a willingness, more of a, I don't understand how to do this.
Exactly, yeah. And it's not like this guy was actually a brain surgeon.
Yeah.
He had no idea what the fuck to do. It was crazy. These traps are fucking brutal. But this movie's also really cool. So it takes place in between, I'm assuming, Saw 1 and Saw 2. It definitely takes place before Saw 2 because John Kramer's like living a normal life and the cops aren't searching for him. And in Saw 2, everybody knew that John Kramer was Jigsaw. We don't know if it takes place before Saw 1 or not. I'm sure that, like, if you paid really close attention to the dates, but it doesn't matter. As long as you know that it happens earlier, John is alive. Whatever. And another really fun thing about this game in particular is that John is there the entire time and is just himself talking to these people in a giant warehouse where they're all trapped together in the same warehouse but far enough apart that they can't do anything to help each other. They just have to watch each other go through these traps one by one. It's fucked up, but it's cool. And then Amanda's there and it's awesome, and they have, like, it's fun to see her actually believe in the message while still being, like, a little crazy and stuff. So it just felt like a movie made for Saw fans, and I loved it. And then if the MCU was around when the Saw movies were being made and they had already popularized after credit scenes, the Saw movies would have been all over after credit scenes. And I was proven right. My theory of that was proven right because they put an after credit scene in Saw 10, which features Jigsaw, John Kramer, and Mark Hoffman in the bathroom setting up another trap together. And it's like, yeah, let's go! And then they're making a Saw 11, which I'm assuming will take place, like, right after that with probably Hoffman and Amanda. So I'm really excited to get to see, like, a retroactive movie where they don't have to make everything through flashbacks, where we can see John, Amanda, and Hoffman setting up traps together.
It seems
and,
like they're
doing
really
stuff
trying to
together.
remedy that confusion and that problem and just make a more straightforward version of the things that we saw, but they just threw it at us, you know?
Yes, exactly.
That's cool. Okay.
Yeah. No, I am so excited for Saw 11. And for every Saw movie, as long as it doesn't feature Chris Rock and features Tobin Bell, I will be seated for it.
Yes. Yep.
You heard it here, Chris Rock.
And Tobin Bell. Stay around.
Yeah, please. Oh, my God. But yeah, that is the Saw series.
We made it.
We made it.
I mean, almost.
I don't know if...
What's our timer looking like?
You don't want to know.
So I think...
We're done, though?
You're
Yeah,
never
you
going to
better-
hear from us again.
You better close this up before the timer
Yeah.
goes. Hurry up.
Thank you. I've
Hurry.
forgotten how to close
Savannah,
it.
you have to save us
Don't
both.
panic.
Okay.
Focus.
Breathe.
Focus.
We'll talk you through this.
Thank you for riding along with us. Please watch your step as you exit, and remember to take all personal belongings and bombs with you. I guess. Get this bomb out of here.
That feels better.
It's nice to see the clock stop
Thank
ticking.
goodness. I hope there's no after credit scenes.
No.
think our work
Is that our
studies are
kids?
drunk. Who else would be lurking
that's true.
outside our door?
We're recording!
They're not gonna hear us.
Oh my god! That's so obnoxious.
That's the kids.
She must be a
So
minion.
where did I even leave off? I was talking about Amanda.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, so I think we
Let's
can
just
continue.
pick up with the plot again so that we don't get,
Murdered.
whatever. Yeah.
I'll have
Whatever.
to write and figure out what our trap is.
Yeah.
I'm forced to watch these on repeat.
Yeah. There's a test at
You
the
must
end of
learn
this.
something from this, or else
Yeah.
it would
Without questioning any of the character development
Yeah.
and plot points.
Yeah.
Right. So